pen felt heavy in my hand, heavier than it should have been for something so small. Across the mahogany table, Sabrina watched me with those cold eyes I barely recognized anymore. The eyes that used to soften when she looked at me had turned to ice somewhere along the way. "Sign it, Marcus," she said, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the wood. "Let's not drag this out." Her lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Miss Brennan, slid the final page toward me. Behind them, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room, I could see the city stretching out below us, all those people living their lives, unaware that mine was ending right here on the 14th floor. "You're worthless without me," Sabrina added, her voice carrying that particular cruelty she'd perfected over the past year. "You know that, right? Everything you have, everything you are, it's because I pushed you. Without me, you're nothing." I looked down at the papers. Our marriage, reduced to legal terminology and asset divisions. She was getting the car, the furniture, most of our savings. I was getting my freedom and a debt I'd be paying off for years. My hand moved almost automatically, signature after signature, each one a small death. The lawyer witnessed it, stamped it, and just like that, 7 years dissolved into paperwork. "There," I said quietly. "It's done." Sabrina smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Finally, now I can move on with my life." She stood up, smoothing her designer dress. "Oh, and Marcus, I'm going to the reception at the Harrington Estate this weekend. You know, that mansion I always wanted. Gerald Pike is taking me. He's actually successful. Unlike some people." The door closed behind her with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot. I drove past the Harrington Estate 3 days later without really meaning to. My hands just turned the wheel that direction, like they had a mind of their own. The place sat on a hill overlooking the valley, surrounded by iron gates and perfectly trimmed hedges. Old money, real money, the kind Sabrina had always dreamed about. Signs along the road advertised public tours on weekends. I parked my beat-up Honda near the visitor entrance and walked toward the gates. A small group was gathering for the 2 o'clock tour. "Sir, do you have a ticket?" A security guard in a crisp uniform stepped in front of me. "No, I just wanted to see." "No ticket, no entry." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "Tours must be booked in advance." "We're at capacity today." That's when I saw her. Sabrina stood on the mansion's front steps, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Gerald Pike had his arm around her waist. He was tall, silver-haired, everything I wasn't. Successful, confident, rich. She saw me through the gates and smiled. Not a friendly smile, a victorious one. Pike whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, the sound carrying across the perfectly manicured lawn. The guard noticed my stare and shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move along." I turned to leave, humiliation burning in my chest. As I walked back to my car, an older man in groundskeeper's clothes was trimming roses near the parking area. He looked up as I passed, studied my face for a moment, then quickly scribbled something on a business card. "Drop this," he said quietly, letting the card flutter to the ground near my feet. I picked it up, confused. Alvarez Trust. Ask for the library was printed in simple black letters. Below it, an address I didn't recognize. The groundskeeper had already turned back to his roses, humming softly, as if nothing had happened. The bills started arriving like clockwork. First, the credit card statements, then the utility bills for the apartment I'd rented after moving out. Everything was in my name because Sabrina had insisted it looked better for her business credit. Now, I understood why. My phone buzzed with another notification. Past due. Final notice. My credit score had dropped 200 points in 3 months. At work, things weren't better. My performance review, scheduled for what should have been a routine check-in, had turned brutal. Mr. Harrison, my supervisor, sat across from me with a file folder thicker than it should have been. "Marcus, we've received complaints about your work quality," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Multiple clients have expressed concerns." "What concerns?" "My numbers are solid. I've never missed a deadline." He opened the folder, showing me printed emails I'd never seen. Complaints about my attitude, my reliability, my competence. None of them made sense. None of them sounded like my actual clients. "I'm placing you on a performance improvement plan," Harrison continued. 90 days to show measurable improvement, or we'll have to let you go." I walked out of his office in a daze. In the parking lot, I found a bright orange sticker on my windshield. My car had been towed for unpaid parking tickets I didn't remember getting. Standing there in the empty space where my Honda should have been, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Mr. Cole?" A woman's voice, professional and calm. "This is regarding the Gabriel Alvarez estate. We have something for you. Can you come to our office tomorrow?" Mrs. Patel's diner sat on a corner I'd passed 100 times, but never noticed. Cheap coffee, cheaper food, the kind of place where nobody looked twice at a man sitting alone for hours. I'd been there since my car got towed, staring at my phone and trying to figure out how to pay the $400 to get it back. The unknown number had called twice more, but I'd ignored it. Probably a scam. Probably someone trying to sell me something I couldn't afford. More coffee? Mrs. Patel appeared beside my booth, pot in hand. She must have been 70, maybe older, with kind eyes that had seen a lot of life. "I can't really pay for what I already ordered," I admitted quietly. She poured anyway. "Then it's on the house. You look like you need it more than I need the money." Something about her kindness broke through the numbness. I found myself telling her everything: the divorce, the bills, the performance review, the car. Words just poured out of me, like water from a broken pipe. She listened without interrupting, then sat down across from me. My husband used to say something when times got hard. He'd say, "Build in the dark. Means keep working, even when you can't see the results yet, even when nobody's watching." I don't know what I'm building anymore. Maybe that's the point. Maybe you build first, understand later. The bell above the door chimed. A courier in a brown uniform scanned the diner, then walked straight to our booth. "Marcus Cole?" I nodded, confused. He handed me a thick manila envelope, heavy with papers. The return address was printed in gold. Alvarez Trust Administration. A wax seal held the flap closed, stamped with an ornate crest. Mrs. Patel squeezed my hand. "See? Sometimes the dark starts to lift." I sat in my tiny apartment that night, staring at the envelope for an hour before I finally broke the seal. The wax cracked cleanly, and papers spilled onto my kitchen table. The first document was a letter, handwritten on thick cream paper. "Dear Marcus Cole, if you're reading this, I've passed on, and my instructions are being carried out. You won't remember me well. We only met once, 5 years ago, when your car broke down outside my property. You were on your way to a job interview. You were already late, but when you saw my gate had jammed and I was struggling with it in the heat, you stopped. You spent 40 minutes helping an old man fix a gate motor, got grease all over your interview clothes, and refused payment. You said you were just helping a neighbor. Then you drove off, late for that interview you probably didn't get. I never forgot that kindness. I had your license plate, so I found out who you were. I've watched your career from a distance. Not in a creepy way, I hope, but with the interest of someone who values character over credentials. The letter continued, explaining that Gabriel Alvarez had established a trust before his death. Attached was a copy of a property deed, a ledger showing property values, and a brass key fragment wrapped in tissue paper. You have a legal right attached to Parcel 19, commonly known as the Harrington Estate. I purchased a right of first refusal 20 years ago at the assessed value from that time. This right transfers to you, Marcus. The current owners must offer you the property at the original price before they can sell to anyone else. My hands shook as I read the final paragraph. Use it wisely. Use it well. Not for revenge, but for purpose. That's what separates good men from bitter ones. The signature was shaky, but clear. Gabriel Alvarez, the Harrington Estate, Sabrina's dream mansion, and I had a legal right to buy it at a fraction of its current worth. The law office of Chen and Associates occupied the third floor of a building that had seen better days. The elevator groaned as it carried me up, and the hallway smelled like old coffee and carpet cleaner. A receptionist directed me to Conference Room B, where a woman about my age sat surrounded by open law books and laptop screens. She looked up, adjusting her glasses. Marcus Cole? I'm Lila Torres, title attorney. I've been reviewing the Alvarez documents. She gestured to a chair. Sit down. This is complicated. For the next hour, she walked me through the legal maze. Gabriel Alvarez had purchased a right of first refusal on the Harrington Estate back when it was worth a fraction of its current value. The right was recorded properly, notarized, filed with the county. It was legitimate, so I can buy it. My voice sounded hollow. At the original assessed price, yes. Roughly $200,000 for a property now worth nearly $4 million. Lila pulled up another document on her screen. But there's a problem. The covenant references an addendum page that should detail the exact terms. That page isn't attached to any of the documents I've received. She showed me the footer of the last page. See Addendum A for complete conditions and requirements. Without the addendum, the other side will argue the right is incomplete, unenforceable. Where would the addendum be? That's what we need to find out. County records, maybe, or Alvarez's personal files. She closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. Marcus, I need to ask, why did Gabriel Alvarez do this for you? I told her about the gate, the 40 minutes, the missed interview. She was quiet for a moment. He gave you a $4 million property because you helped him fix a gate? I guess he saw something worth investing in. More than my ex-wife did. Lila smiled slightly. Well, let's make sure his investment pays off. I'll start searching for that addendum. The second letter arrived 3 days later, delivered to Lila's office. She called me immediately, her voice tight with something between excitement and concern. You need to see this. Now. I took a cab I couldn't afford and arrived to find her holding another envelope, this one marked with a red seal. Marcus, If you found the first letter, you're serious. Good. The addendum is real, and it contains the condition for exercising your right. Listen carefully. The Harrington estate includes a carriage house on the eastern edge of the property. To exercise your right of first refusal, you must operate that carriage house as transitional housing for single parents for a minimum of 5 years. Real housing, not symbolic. You must provide it, maintain it, and serve the families who need it. This is not optional. This is the price of the property. I'm giving you an opportunity, but I'm also giving you a responsibility. If you can't commit to both, the right passes to the next beneficiary. The letter continued with specific requirements: minimum number of families served, quality standards, regular inspections by a designated trustee. There's more, Lila said quietly. She showed me the final paragraph. You have 30 days from the date you receive this letter to close on the property. If you fail to close within that time frame, the right of first refusal passes automatically to Gerald Pike, LLC. My stomach dropped. Pike? The man Sabrina's with? Same one. And look at the date this letter was sent. She pointed to the postmark. You received it 3 days ago. You have 27 days left. I don't have $200,000. I don't even have $2,000. Then we figure out how to get it. Lila's jaw was set. Because Pike already knows about this. Want to guess how I know? She pulled up another document on her screen. A legal filing, dated yesterday. Gerald Pike, LLC, had filed a temporary injunction claiming the covenant was defective and unenforceable. The war had officially begun. The summons came delivered by a courier in an expensive suit. Gerald Pike wanted to meet me at his office downtown. Not a request, a summons. His office occupied the top floor of the newest high-rise in the city. Glass walls, modern art, furniture that cost more than my car. Pike sat behind a desk, the size of my kitchen table. His silver hair perfectly styled. His suit probably custom-made. Marcus Cole. He didn't stand or offer his hand. I'll make this brief. You can't afford a broom closet in this city, let alone the Harrington estate. Drop this ridiculous claim, and I'll make sure your credit issues disappear. Keep pushing, and I'll bury you so deep you'll never crawl out. The covenant is legal. The covenant is defective. Missing pages, questionable signatures, an old man's confused attempt to play God. He leaned forward. I have lawyers who eat cases like this for breakfast. You have what? Some public defender working out of a closet? I have the truth. Pike laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. The truth. Let me tell you a truth. Sabrina and I are getting married. She'll be living in the Harrington estate as Mrs. Gerald Pike. And when we own it, free and clear, which we will, I'll make sure everyone knows you tried to scam your way into a property you don't deserve. He stood up, dismissing me with a gesture. Oh, and Marcus, that performance review at work, the credit issues, the parking tickets. I have friends in a lot of places. Make the smart choice. Walk away. As I left his office, my phone buzzed. Lila had sent a message. Pike filed injunction. Hearing set for 2 weeks. We need that addendum. I called her from the elevator. He's the one sabotaging me. The work complaints, the credit problems. All of it. Probably. Rich men play dirty when they want something. Her voice was grim. But here's the thing. If he's trying this hard to stop you, it means he's worried. It means the covenant is stronger than he wants us to believe. Every bank said no. Every loan officer looked at my credit score, my employment situation, my complete lack of collateral, and showed me the door with polite smiles and empty promises. Pike's whisper campaign was working. Everywhere I went, doors closed before I could even make my case. Former colleagues stopped returning my calls. References I'd lined up suddenly became unreachable. I was sitting in my apartment staring at loan rejection number 7 when my phone rang. County Recorder's Office. Mr. Cole? This is Victor Rivas. I'm the county recorder. I heard you're looking for an addendum to the Alvarez Covenant. You found it? Maybe. I was going through old microfilm records, the stuff we haven't digitized yet. There's a notation in the index from 20 years ago that references a supplementary document to the Harrington Estate Covenant. It might be your addendum. Where is it? That's the problem. The microfilm is damaged. I can barely read it. But I think I can make out a signature and a notary seal. If you can come down tonight, I'll let you see it. Officially, we're closed. But this seemed important. I met him at the county building after dark. The recorder's office was empty except for us, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Rivas was a small man with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers. He led me to a back room where ancient microfilm readers sat gathering dust. I'm risking my job showing you this before official processing, he said quietly. But I knew Gabriel Alvarez. He was a good man. He threaded the microfilm carefully, adjusted the focus, and there it was. Blurry, but readable. The addendum, with Alvarez's signature clear at the bottom. And beside it, a second notary seal. That's the proof we need, I whispered. Maybe, but you'll need the notary to verify it. That's the only way it'll hold up in court. Rivas pointed to the signature. Leo Vargas. He notarized both the covenant and this addendum. Where can I find him? Rivas's expression turned somber. Westside Hospice. He's got maybe weeks left. Pancreatic cancer. Westside Hospice smelled like antiseptic and flowers. The kind of place where people went to die with dignity. Leo Vargas was in room 112, propped up in bed, surrounded by photos of grandchildren and a lifetime of memories. He was thin, his skin paper pale, but his eyes were sharp when I introduced myself. Gabriel Alvarez, he said, nodding slowly. I remember that covenant. Strangest thing I ever notarized. He said it was for a good man who didn't know he was good yet. I need you to verify the documents. There's a court hearing, and without your testimony, I'll lose everything. Leo coughed, a rattling sound that made me wince. I'm dying, son. Not sure I'll make it to any courthouse. We can do a video deposition. Right here, right now. It's legally admissible if you verify your signature and seal. He studied me for a long moment. Why does this matter so much to you? It's just a house. It's not about the house. It's about proving I'm worth something. That I'm not worthless like my ex-wife said. That one act of kindness, one moment of doing the right thing when nobody was watching, that it meant something. Leo smiled faintly. Okay, let's do it. Lila arrived with a notary and recording equipment. For 40 minutes, Leo told the camera everything. How Alvarez had come to him 20 years ago with both documents. How he'd notarized them personally. Verified every signature. Watched Alvarez seal them with wax. He told me this would test a good man. Leo said, his voice growing weaker. He said the property wasn't the gift. The test was the gift. Finding out what kind of man you are when nobody's forcing you to be decent. When we finished, Leo gripped my hand with surprising strength. Win this. Don't let rich bastards steal what Gabriel gave you. 3 days later, Lila called. Leo's testimony is solid, but there's a problem. Pike's team leaked a story to the local news. They're calling you a con artist, trying to steal a multi-million-dollar property. The article was brutal. Local man claims right to historic estate in bizarre scam attempt. My photo, pulled from some old social media profile, made me look desperate and unhinged. The comments section was worse. My phone exploded with messages. Former friends wanting to know if it was true. Strangers sending hate mail. My landlord called, asking if I'd be able to make next month's rent. At work, Harrison called me into his office. I'm sorry, Marcus. Given the publicity, we can't keep you on. It's a liability issue. I'm being set up. This is all effective immediately. Security will escort you out. I walked through the office, carrying a cardboard box of my desk belongings, while coworkers avoided eye contact. In the parking lot, I sat in my Honda, staring at nothing. My phone rang. Caller ID showed a name I hadn't seen in 3 years. Nadia Cole, my sister. I saw the news, she said. No greeting, just straight to business. That was Nadia. Is it real? The covenant? Yes. Then why are you sitting in a parking lot instead of fighting? How did you? I'm watching on your phone's location. I'm your emergency contact, remember? Marcus, I know we haven't talked since Mom's funeral. I know we said things we shouldn't have, but I'm still your sister. And if you're telling the truth, if this is real, I want to help. Something broke loose in my chest. I don't have money for a lawyer, for closing costs, for anything. And even if I did, Pike's trying to block the sale entirely. What if I co-signed a bridge loan? Would that work? Nadia, you can't risk. Let me decide what I can risk. Send me your lawyer's number. Let's schedule a meeting. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, crying for reasons I couldn't entirely explain. The loan approval came through on a Thursday. Nadia had put up her house as collateral, and somehow, miraculously, we'd found a lender willing to work with us. The closing was scheduled for 3 weeks out, right at the edge of the 30-day deadline. Then the county inspector called. Mr. Cole, I'm required to inform you of a serious issue with the Harrington estate. During our routine inspection, we discovered extensive black mold contamination in multiple structures, including the carriage house. Until remediation is complete, the property cannot be sold or transferred. My blood went cold. How bad is it? Catastrophic. We're talking months of work, maybe longer. The sale is blocked until it's resolved. I called Lila immediately. This is Pike. This has to be Pike. Probably, but proving it is different from knowing it. We need an independent inspection, and we need it fast. If that mold report is legitimate, you're dead in the water. She arranged for an independent environmental firm to inspect the property the next day. I met them at dawn, watching as they went through every inch of the carriage house with moisture meters and air quality sensors. The lead inspector, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Foster, emerged 3 hours later shaking her head. Someone staged this. Look. She showed me photos on her tablet. These are bleach lines, where they sprayed to create the appearance of mold growth. And these moisture packs, they're the kind used for basement dehumidification, but they're positioned to make moisture readings spike artificially. Can you testify to this? I can do better. I can file a counter report with the county and request an investigation into inspector misconduct. Someone paid to fake these results. But even as she said it, my phone lit up with a notification. Sabrina had posted on social media, excited to announce a charity gala at the beautiful Harrington estate this Saturday. Come celebrate new beginnings with Gerald and me. Blessed Usher new chapter. The photo showed her in front of the mansion, Pike's arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling like they'd already won. The gala was in 3 days. Pike's injunction hearing was the morning of the gala, and I still had no guarantee I could actually close on the property even if I won. I couldn't sleep that night, kept thinking about Alvarez, about his letter, about the 40 minutes I'd spent helping a stranger fix a gate. How could he have known that moment would lead here? How could he have planned for all of this? At midnight, I drove to the cemetery where Alvarez was buried. The gate was closed, but I parked outside and walked the perimeter until I found his grave under an oak tree. The headstone was simple granite with his name and dates. I sat down on the grass beside it. I hope I'm doing this right, I said to the stone. I hope this is what you wanted, because it feels like I'm drowning, and I don't know if I'm supposed to keep swimming or just let go. The brass key fragment from the envelope was in my pocket. I took it out, turning it over in the moonlight. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. The key wasn't broken randomly. It had been cut deliberately, shaped to fit something specific. The headstone had a decorative element at its base, a brass medallion with the same crest as the wax seal. On impulse, I pressed the key fragment into the crest's center. It clicked. A small panel popped open, revealing a hollow niche inside the stone's base. Inside was a tin box, small enough to fit in my palm. I opened it with shaking hands. Papers, original receipts for work I'd done 5 years ago, the day I'd helped Alvarez with his gate. But not just receipts. A letter addressed to me, dated the same day. Marcus, if you're reading this, my plan worked. You found your way back to me, even after I'm gone. These receipts are dated the exact week I created the covenant. I backdated them deliberately so they'd show a paper trail of your employment at the estate. Legally, you have standing not just through the right of first refusal, but as someone who performed labor on the property. Pike won't see this coming. Use it wisely. I sat there holding proof that Alvarez had planned this with precision I couldn't fully comprehend. He'd built layers of legal protection, knowing Pike would attack from every angle. The old man had believed in me more than I'd believed in myself. Mrs. Patel called me the next morning. I heard about your trouble. Come to the diner. I found her there with a group of people I didn't know. Small business owners, community leaders, parents from the neighborhood. Marcus, she said, you told me about the carriage house requirement, the transitional housing for single parents. These people want to help make that real. A woman named Samantha, who ran a daycare center, spoke up. I can provide childcare services for the families you house. No charge for the first year. A man named Troy, who owned a contracting business, stepped forward. I'll donate labor for renovations, materials at cost. One by one, they pledged support, donations, services, time. By the end of the meeting, we had commitments that would make the carriage house program not just possible, but sustainable. Why are you doing this? I asked them. Mrs. Patel smiled. Because Gabriel Alvarez helped every single person in this room at some point. Some of us didn't even know it was him until after he died. He paid medical bills, gave business loans, covered rent. He did it quietly, never asked for recognition. This is our chance to pay it forward. We heard Pike's trying to stop you, Troy added. We also heard he's doing it because he wants to tear down the carriage house and build luxury condos. That's not happening. Not if we can help it. That afternoon, Lila called with news. Pike's injunction hearing is set for 9 a.m. Saturday, same day as the gala. Judge Thompson is presiding. I've submitted our evidence, including Leo's deposition and the microfilm records. What are our chances? Honestly, 50-50. Thompson's fair, but she's also conservative. She'll want ironclad proof before she rules in our favor. I found something else. I told her about the receipts from the headstone. Alvarez created a paper trail, proof I worked at the estate. Lila was quiet for a moment. That's brilliant. That gives us a secondary claim if the covenant fails. But Marcus, there's something you need to know. Pike's been trying to bribe Rivas, the county recorder. He wants him to lose the index record that led us to the microfilm. Will he do it? I don't know. Money talks, and Pike has a lot of it. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and mounting dread. The courthouse was downtown, a stern building with marble columns and too many stairs. Lila met me outside, carrying 3 briefcases worth of documents. Nadia's inside, she said. So is Pike, with his whole legal team. This is going to be ugly. Courtroom C was smaller than I expected. Pike sat at the plaintiff's table with 4 lawyers, all of them in suits that cost more than my rent. Sabrina was in the gallery, watching with barely concealed anticipation. Judge Thompson entered, a severe woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Let's get started. This is a hearing on the temporary injunction filed by Gerald Pike LLC regarding the Harrington Estate Covenant. Mr. Reeves, you may begin. Pike's lead attorney was smooth, confident. He argued that the covenant was defective because the addendum was missing, that Alvarez had been mentally incompetent when he created it, that I had no legitimate claim to a multi-million-dollar property based on a chance encounter 5 years ago. Your Honor, Reeves concluded, this is clearly an attempt to exploit a confused old man's generosity. Mr. Cole is a failed employee with credit problems and a history of poor judgment. He cannot provide the resources necessary to maintain the carriage house requirement, even if the covenant were valid, which we dispute. Then it was Lila's turn. She played Leo's video deposition first. The courtroom went silent as Leo's voice filled the space, steady and clear despite his illness. I notarized both documents personally. Gabriel Alvarez was completely competent. He told me this would test a good man. That was his exact phrase. Lila then called Rivas to the stand. The county recorder looked nervous, but determined. Yes, I found the microfilm record. Yes, the addendum exists. The chain of custody is clear and documented. Pike's lawyer objected repeatedly, but Thompson shut him down. I'll allow it. Continue, Ms. Torres. Lila presented the receipts from the headstone, the proof of my employment at the estate. Then she brought up Dr. Foster's report about the staged mold contamination. Your Honor, this injunction is not about protecting property rights. It's about a wealthy developer trying to bully a legitimate heir out of his inheritance through fraud, intimidation, and bribery. Pike's face turned red, but he kept his composure. Judge Thompson reviewed the documents in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. The evidence suggests the covenant is valid. The addendum exists and is properly notarized. Mr. Cole has legal standing through both the right of first refusal and documented employment at the property. She turned to Pike. As for the mold contamination, I'm ordering an immediate investigation into inspector misconduct. The injunction is dissolved. Mr. Cole, you have until the original deadline to close on the property. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the courtroom. I'd won, at least this round. The gala started at 8 p.m. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I went anyway. Pulled up in my Honda while luxury cars lined the circular drive. Security stopped me at the gate. Name? Marcus Cole. I'm the new owner. The guard checked his list. Confused. Sir, I don't have you. Lila appeared from behind me, holding papers. Judge's order. Property transfer was processed this afternoon. Emergency closing. Mr. Cole is the legal owner of the Harrington estate. As of 4 p.m. today. That means he decides who enters. The guard looked at the papers, looked at me, then stepped aside. The mansion was lit up like a cathedral. Inside, wealthy donors mingled with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, admiring art and architecture. At the far end of the foyer, a stage had been set up for speeches. Pike was on that stage when I walked in. He was mid-sentence, talking about vision and legacy. When he saw me, his face went pale. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, not shouting but speaking clearly enough that heads turned. I apologize for the interruption. My name is Marcus Cole, and as of this afternoon, I'm the owner of the Harrington estate. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sabrina stood frozen near the stairs, champagne glass halfway to her lips. Pike recovered quickly. This is absurd. Security, remove this man. Security works for me now, I said calmly. Actually, everyone works for me now. Because I own this property. Want to see the deed? Lila stepped forward with a projector. She set it up quickly, displaying documents on the wall behind Pike. The covenant, the addendum, the microfilm images, the receipts. Gabriel Alvarez gave Marcus Cole a right of first refusal 20 years ago, Lila explained to the crowd. That right was executed legally this afternoon. Mr. Cole purchased this property for $200,000. Its assessed value from 2 decades ago. Everything Mr. Pike has told you about future development is void. Pike sputtered. Those documents are forged. No living witness can verify. The projection changed. Leo's face appeared, his video deposition playing for everyone to see. His voice was weak but steady as he explained the notarization, the covenant, Alvarez's intentions. For a good man named Marcus Cole, Leo said on screen. The crowd murmured. Some people were taking out their phones, filming this. Chain of custody, Pike shouted desperately. The county records are... Rivas stepped forward from the crowd. I hadn't even seen him arrive. I'm Victor Rivas, county recorder. The documents are legitimate. I certified them personally. And Mr. Pike, your attempt to bribe me to lose those records is documented and has been reported to the district attorney. The murmuring turned to shocked whispers. Mrs. Patel emerged from another part of the crowd. She walked to the front, facing Pike directly. You counted what he lacked. We counted what he gave. That's the difference between you and Marcus. Applause started somewhere in the back. The applause grew louder, spreading through the room like wildfire. Pike stood on the stage, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Sabrina had disappeared into the crowd, probably looking for an exit. Judge Thompson stepped forward from the gallery. I hadn't realized she was there. Since I'm already present, and since this property transfer has been legally contested, I'll make an on-site ruling for the record. Based on the evidence presented in court this morning and verified here tonight, the covenant is valid, all stays are dissolved, and Marcus Cole is the rightful owner of the Harrington estate. She pulled out a small gavel from her purse. Apparently, she carried one for emergencies and tapped it against the stage railing. Official, Mr. Pike, I suggest you vacate the premises immediately. Pike's lawyers were already heading for the door. He stood there for another moment, staring at me with pure hatred, then followed them out. The crowd parted to let him through, their whispers following him like ghosts. As he reached the door, he turned back. This isn't over, Cole. I'll find every code violation, every zoning issue, every possible way to make your life miserable. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, Lila said quietly, threatening a property owner in front of witnesses, including a judge, probably isn't your smartest move, but you do you. Pike left, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was broken by Mrs. Patel. Well then, since we're all here, and since this is supposed to be a charity gala, maybe we should talk about the actual charity. She turned to me. Marcus, tell them about the Alvarez House program. I hadn't prepared a speech, hadn't expected any of this, but I walked to the microphone Pike had abandoned and looked out at faces that were curious now instead of hostile. Gabriel Alvarez gave me this property with a condition, I began. The carriage house has to operate as transitional housing for single parents for at least 5 years. Real housing with support services, childcare, job training, places where families can rebuild their lives without fear. I pulled out my phone and brought up the list Mrs. Patel had helped me compile. I'm accepting applications starting tonight. If you know someone who needs help, someone who's working hard but can't catch a break, someone who just needs a safe place to land, send them to me. A woman in an elegant dress raised her hand. How many families can you house? The carriage house can accommodate 6 families comfortably, but with renovations and community support, maybe more eventually. I'd like to donate to those renovations, she said. My company specializes in sustainable housing design. Consider it our contribution. Another hand went up. I run a job placement service. I'll prioritize your families for our openings. One by one, people who'd come to celebrate Pike's victory started pledging support for something better. Donations, services, connections. The charity gala became exactly that, just for a different cause. Sabrina reappeared near the back of the room. Our eyes met across the crowd. She looked smaller somehow, less sure of herself than I'd ever seen her. The crowd eventually dispersed, leaving pledges and business cards in piles on various tables. Nadia found me standing in the empty foyer, staring up at the chandelier. You did it, she said softly. I didn't think you would, but you did. I had help. A lot of it. That's what you never understood, Marcus. You always thought you had to do everything alone, that asking for help meant you were weak. She squeezed my shoulder. But the strong thing is letting people see you need them. Lila was packing up her equipment when Sabrina approached. My ex-wife looked uncertain, vulnerable, in a way I'd never seen during our marriage. Marcus, can we talk? Privately. We stepped out onto the mansion's front terrace. The city lights spread out below us. The same view I'd glimpsed through the gates weeks ago. Now I was standing on the other side. I was wrong, Sabrina said quietly. About everything. About you. About what matters. About what makes someone worthwhile. She twisted the engagement ring on her finger. Pike's ring. Gerald told me we were going to live here. That's why I stayed with him, even after I realized what kind of man he really is. I thought the house would make me happy. And now? Now I'm realizing that houses don't do that. Money doesn't do that. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 7 years ago. I said you were worthless without me. But the truth is, I felt worthless without your steadiness, your decency. I tried to fill that hole with things and status and men like Gerald. But you can't fill emptiness with more emptiness. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm leaving him. Because I need you to know I see it now. What I threw away. She took a breath. The carriage house program. Do you think there's room for someone who's not a single parent, but who needs to rebuild her life anyway? I studied her face, looking for manipulation, for an angle. All I saw was genuine regret. The program is for single parents, I said carefully. But there are other resources. Mrs. Patel knows people. I can get you connected. I wasn't asking for myself. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Gerald's assistant. Her name is Whitney. She has a 3-year-old daughter, and she's been trying to leave an abusive situation for months. Gerald's been blocking her, threatening her job, her references. She needs help. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a completed application with Whitney's information and a letter explaining her situation. Why would you help her? Because maybe if I help someone else get what they need, I'll start figuring out what I actually need. Sabrina looked back at the mansion. This place is beautiful, but it's just a building. You're going to fill it with something real. That matters more than I understood. She walked away before I could respond, her heels clicking against the stone terrace. The next morning, I met with Troy and his contracting crew at the carriage house. The building was solid, but dated, with peeling paint and outdated electrical. But it had good bones, as Troy put it. And it had space for 6 family units, each with a small kitchen, bathroom, and living area. We can have the first 2 units ready in 3 weeks, Troy said, measuring windows. The rest will take another month, maybe 6 weeks. Depends on inspections and materials. Mrs. Patel arrived with coffee and pastries, turning the work site into an impromptu breakfast meeting. Samantha, the daycare owner, came by to discuss the childcare space we were creating in the carriage house's common area. I've already got a waiting list, she said. Word spread fast about what you're doing here. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Cole? This is Detective Brennan with the District Attorney's Office. We're investigating the bribery allegations against Gerald Pike. We'd like your cooperation. For the next hour, I gave a statement about everything Pike had done. The threats, the sabotage, the attempted bribery of Rivas, the staged mold contamination. They were building a case, the detective explained. White-collar crimes, abuse of power, corruption. It would take time, but they were taking it seriously. After I hung up, Lila arrived with more paperwork. The title is clear. The property is fully yours, and I've set up the Alvarez House as a registered nonprofit. You're the director, but there's a board of trustees to ensure accountability. Mrs. Patel, Troy and Samantha have agreed to serve. What about you? She smiled. I'm your attorney. Someone has to keep you out of legal trouble. That afternoon, I met Whitney, Gerald's former assistant. She was young, maybe 25, with tired eyes, and a little girl who clung to her leg. They'd been staying in a motel, she explained, ever since she'd finally worked up the courage to leave her ex. I don't have much, Whitney said, but I'm a hard worker. I just need a chance. That's what this place is for. Chances. I showed her the unit that would be ready first. 3 weeks, and you can move in. Rent is 20% of your income, whatever that is. No credit check, no judgment. She started crying. Why would you do this for strangers? Because someone did it for me, in a different way, but still, someone believed I was worth investing in when nobody else did. The first families moved into the Alvarez house 6 weeks later. Whitney and her daughter in Unit 1. A woman named Carmen with twin boys in Unit 2. 4 more families would follow as the renovations completed. I stood in the courtyard between the main house and the carriage house, watching kids play while their mothers talked on the benches Troy had installed. This was what Alvarez had envisioned. Not revenge against Pike or Sabrina, not wealth or status, just this. Lives being rebuilt, one day at a time. My phone buzzed. A text from Nadia. Mom would be proud of you. My mother had died 3 years ago, and Nadia and I had barely spoken since the funeral. We'd fought about something stupid, the way siblings do, and let pride keep us apart. But this whole journey had taught me that pride was expensive in all the wrong ways. I called her. Thank you for the loan, for believing in me, for showing up when it mattered. That's what family does, Marcus. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while. That evening, Mrs. Patel organized a dedication ceremony. The whole community showed up. The donors, the volunteers, the families who'd already moved in, even some reporters who'd heard about the project. Lila unveiled a plaque she'd had made, Alvarez House, where second chances begin. Below it was a quote from Gabriel's letter, Build in the dark. The light will come. As people mingled and celebrated, I found myself back at the main house, in the library where all of this had started to make sense. The brass key fragment sat on the mantel, next to a photo of Gabriel Alvarez I'd found in his estate papers. I hope I'm doing right by you, I said to the photo. I hope this is what you meant. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Victor Rivas stood there, holding a folder. Mr. Cole, I thought you should have these. Final documents from the Alvarez estate, including a letter he wrote the day before he died. I opened the folder. The letter was addressed to me, written in that same shaky hand. Marcus, if you're reading this final letter, you've completed the journey. You've faced down corruption, rejected bitterness, chosen purpose over revenge. I'm proud of you, though we barely knew each other. I bought that right of first refusal 20 years ago after you helped me with my gate. Yes, but I held on to it all these years because I was waiting to see what kind of man you'd become, waiting to see if that moment of kindness was who you really were, or just a performance. I watched you lose your marriage, your job, your confidence. I watched you get beaten down by life and people who should have loved you better. And you know what I never saw? I never saw you take it out on anyone else. Never saw you become cruel or bitter or small. That's when I knew. That's when I finalized the covenant and wrote these letters. Because a man who stays decent when the world is indecent, that's the man who deserves a chance to build something beautiful. The house was never the gift, Marcus. The gift was the opportunity to prove to yourself what I already knew. You're worth more than anyone ever made you feel. Build something lasting. Build something kind. And when you're done, pass it on to the next person who needs to remember their worth. With respect and admiration, Gabriel Alvarez. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words by the end. 3 months later, all 6 units were occupied. The Alvarez house was running smoothly, with wait lists for future openings. Whitney had gotten a job at a marketing firm. Carmen's twins were thriving in Samantha's daycare, and the other families were finding their footing. The main house remained mostly empty. I'd moved into a small suite on the 2nd floor, but the rest of the mansion felt too big, too much for just me. Lila suggested turning it into administrative offices for the nonprofit and event space for fundraisers. You could also live in it, she said. It's your house. You're allowed to enjoy it. It doesn't feel right. All this space while families are struggling. Gabriel gave you this property because he trusted your judgment. Trust yourself to know what's right. That conversation was interrupted by Detective Brennan calling, "We've completed our investigation of Gerald Pike. Multiple charges, bribery, fraud, conspiracy to commit extortion. He's facing serious prison time. His business empire is collapsing." What about Sabrina? She's cooperating as a witness. Apparently, she kept documentation of a lot of his schemes. We've granted her immunity in exchange for testimony. After we hung up, I sat in the library, thinking about how far everyone had fallen or risen in just a few months. Pike, from powerful developer to defendant. Sabrina, from trophy girlfriend to witness. Me, from divorced nobody to, what? Nonprofit director? Property owner? Still the same guy who helped an old man fix a gate, just with more responsibilities now. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Sabrina. Can I visit the Alvarez house tomorrow? I'd like to volunteer if you'll have me." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. 10 a.m. Ask for Mrs. Patel. She runs the volunteer program. Sabrina showed up at exactly 10, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt instead of her usual designer clothes. Mrs. Patel put her to work immediately, organizing donations in the storage room. I watched from a distance as my ex-wife sorted through boxes of children's clothes, folding them carefully, labeling sizes. She looked almost peaceful, more at ease than I'd seen her in years. "She's been here every day this week," Mrs. Patel said, appearing beside me. "Comes early, stays late, never complains. Whatever she's working through, she's serious about it. Should I talk to her? Do you want to?" I didn't know. Part of me wanted to keep that distance, to maintain the boundaries I'd finally learned to set. Another part remembered the woman I'd married, wondered if she was still in there somewhere. That afternoon, Sabrina found me in the courtyard. "Can we talk?" We sat on one of Troy's benches while kids played nearby. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that watching what you've built here, it's changing how I see everything. Gerald showed me what success without character looks like. You're showing me the opposite. I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. I'm just trying to keep a promise I made to a dead man. I know. That's what makes it real." She watched Whitney's daughter climb on the playground equipment Troy had installed. "I spent our whole marriage trying to make you into something you weren't. Someone ambitious and ruthless and willing to step on people to get ahead. I thought that's what success looked like. And now? Now I'm learning that maybe I was the one who needed to change. She stood up. I'm not asking to be friends, or to try again or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that you were right. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. She walked back to the storage room before I could respond. A year after closing on the property, the Alvarez house was featured in a national news story about innovative housing solutions. The publicity brought more donations, more volunteers, and more applications than we could handle. Nadia suggested we expand, maybe buy another property and replicate the model. Mrs. Patel thought we should focus on deepening our impact with the families we had. Troy wanted to train some of our residents in construction so they could help renovate future properties. We were sitting in the library, now converted into a meeting room, debating options when Lila arrived with unexpected news. Gabriel Alvarez had other properties, 7 of them, scattered across 3 counties. Most are small, but they're all paid off. And according to his will, they all transfer to the Alvarez House nonprofit now that you've successfully completed the first year of operations. We sat in stunned silence. He was testing me, I said finally. The Harrington estate was the test. These other properties are the reward. Or the next challenge, Nadia said. 7 properties means 7 potential Alvarez houses. 42 more families. The weight of it hit me. Gabriel hadn't just given me a house. He'd given me a mission that would take years, maybe decades, to fully realize. We'll need more staff, Mrs. Patel said practically. More volunteers, more funding, more infrastructure. We'll figure it out, I said. Same way we figured out everything else. One day at a time. That evening, I drove to Gabriel's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the sun setting behind the hills. I sat by his headstone, the way I had that night a year ago when everything was falling apart. Thank you, I said simply. I understand now. It was never about the house, or the money, or proving anything to Sabrina, or Pike. It was about figuring out who I am when nobody's watching, who I choose to be when I could choose to be bitter. The wind rustled through the oak tree above me, and for a moment, I could almost hear Gabriel's voice. Build in the dark. The light will come. 2 years after that first closing, the Alvarez House Network had expanded to 4 properties, housing 28 families. Whitney had become our operations manager. Carmen was training as a social worker. 3 of our original residents had moved into their own homes, stable and thriving. Sabrina had continued volunteering, eventually joining our board of directors. She'd used her connections to bring in major donors, but she worked just as hard sorting donations and tutoring kids. We weren't friends exactly, but we'd found a kind of peace. Pike had been sentenced to 5 years in prison. His company had dissolved, his assets seized to pay restitution to the people he'd defrauded. I didn't take pleasure in his downfall, but I didn't mourn it either. Justice was just justice. The main house at the Harrington estate had become our headquarters. The rooms that once echoed with emptiness now hummed with purpose. Offices, training rooms, a commercial kitchen for the childcare program, meeting spaces for residents and supporters. I'd kept one room for myself, a small bedroom on the 3rd floor with a view of the courtyard. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of children playing and mothers talking and lives being rebuilt. It was the best alarm clock I'd ever had. On the anniversary of that first closing, we held a celebration. All the families, all the volunteers, all the donors who'd made it possible. Nadia flew in from Seattle, where she'd started her own nonprofit based on our model. Lila gave a speech about how one man's kindness had rippled outward in ways Gabriel probably never imagined. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. Gabriel Alvarez once told someone that the gift wasn't the house. The gift was finding out what kind of person you are when nobody's forcing you to be decent. I'm still learning, but I think he'd be happy with the progress. The crowd applauded, but the real reward was simpler. It was Whitney's daughter running up to hug my leg. It was Carmen's twins showing me their artwork. It was seeing women who'd been broken find their strength again. That night, after everyone left, I sat in the library, my library now, with a brass key fragment on the mantel and Gabriel's letters framed on the wall. Worth isn't granted, I thought. Worth is proved. I'd proved mine, not by buying a mansion or beating my ex-wife or destroying an enemy, but by showing up every day and doing the work, by choosing purpose over bitterness, by building something in the dark until the light came. Sabrina had been right about one thing during our marriage. I'd needed to become more ambitious. I just hadn't understood what that meant. Ambition wasn't about money or status. It was about impact, about leaving the world better than you found it. I looked around the library, at the shelves, now filled with files and resources instead of decorative books, at the desk covered in applications and thank you notes, at the walls bearing photos of families we'd helped. This was success, real success, the kind that mattered when you were standing at someone's grave someday, hoping you'd lived a life worth remembering. My phone buzzed. A text from Lila. New property opportunity in Riverside. 3 units. Interested? I smiled and typed back, always. Send me the details. Because the work wasn't done. It would never be done. As long as there were people who needed second chances. People who needed someone to believe in them, the way Gabriel had believed in me, there was more building to do. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of the carriage house, where families were settling in for the night. Somewhere out there was the next person who needed help, the next Whitney or Carmen, the next me, standing in a dumpster or a courtroom or a cemetery, wondering if they'd ever be worth something. And when they showed up, when they finally found their way to these gates, I'd be ready. Not with judgment or conditions, but with the same thing Gabriel had given me, an opportunity to prove to themselves what I already knew, that they were worth it, that they'd always been worth it, that sometimes all a person needs is someone to believe in them before they believe in themselves. 5 years after I signed those divorce papers, I stood in the Harrington Estates foyer as our 50th family graduated from the program. Graduated. That's what we called it when residents moved into their own homes, stable and self-sufficient. The ceremony had become a tradition. Residents, volunteers, board members, and community partners gathered to celebrate. Each graduating family received a brass key, a replica of the fragment Gabriel had left me, to symbolize their new beginning. This key represents your strength, I told them. Same speech I gave every graduation. Not mine, not the Alvarez house. Yours. You did the work. You made the choice to keep going when it would have been easier to give up. This key just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it. I handed the key to a woman named Angela, who'd arrived 18 months ago with 2 teenagers and a history of domestic violence. Now, she was a licensed real estate agent with her own apartment and custody of her kids. She hugged me, crying, and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." After the ceremony, I found Sabrina helping clean up. Same as always. We'd never gotten back together. That ship had sailed. But we'd built something different. Something better, maybe. A partnership based on shared purpose instead of obligation or need. "I was thinking," she said, stacking chairs. "That property in Riverside. What if we tried something different? Mixed income housing? Some market rate units to subsidize the transitional ones. Sustainability, you know? That's actually brilliant. Write up a proposal for the board." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. The real smile, not the practiced one from our marriage. Who would have thought? Me, excited about zoning regulations and subsidy models. People change when they find purpose, or when they finally stop running from themselves. She paused. "Gerald got paroled last month. Did you hear?" I had. Detective Brennan had called to let me know. "How do you feel about it?" "Nothing, really. He's just a man who made bad choices. Same as I did." She looked around the foyer, at the photos on the walls of all the families we'd served. "The difference is some of us get chances to make better ones." That night, I drove to the cemetery one last time. Gabriel's grave had flowers on it. Mrs. Patel left them weekly, and the oak tree had grown fuller, stronger. "We hit 50 families today," I told the headstone. 7 properties, running smoothly. 2 more in development. "You started something bigger than I think even you imagined." I placed my own flowers beside Mrs. Patel's. "I never got to thank you properly. For the house, yes, but more for the lesson. You taught me that worth isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you build, action by action, choice by choice, day by day." The wind rustled the oak leaves, and I stood there remembering the man I'd been 2 years ago. Broken, divorced, standing in a courtroom, signing away his life. That man thought he was worthless because Sabrina said so, because Pike said so, because the world seemed to confirm it with every rejection and failure. But Gabriel had seen something different. He'd seen a man who stopped to help a stranger fix a gate. A man who did the right thing when nobody was watching, when there was no reward, when he had every excuse not to. That man was worth investing in. That man was worth $4 million and 7 properties, and a legacy that would outlive all of us. I pulled out my phone and looked at the text from Lila about the Riverside property. 3 units, 12 more families, eventually, 12 more chances to prove that second chances work, that people are worth believing in, that one act of kindness can ripple outward for decades. "Worth isn't granted," I said to Gabriel's grave, to the wind, to myself. It's proved. I drove back to the Harrington estate as the sun set, painting the mansion in gold and amber light. The carriage house windows glowed warm, families inside living their second chances. The main house stood steady, purpose-built now, every room serving something bigger than ego or status. This was success. Not the house, or the money, or the vindication over Sabrina and Pike, though those had their place in the story. Real success was measured in lives changed, families stabilized, children who'd grow up knowing stability instead of chaos. I parked and walked to my 3rd-floor room, but paused at the library first. Gabriel's letters were still framed on the wall, his words as clear today as when I'd first read them. Build in the dark. The light will come. I'd built. The light had come. And now it was my turn to be the Gabriel Alvarez for someone else. To watch for the person who stops to help when they don't have to, who stays kind when the world is cruel, who keeps going when giving up would be easier. That person was out there somewhere right now, maybe standing in a courtroom or a cemetery or behind a dumpster, wondering if they'd ever be worth anything. And when they showed up at these gates, when they finally found their way here, I'd be ready with the same gift Gabriel gave me. Not just a house, but a chance to remember their worth. Because that's how it works. That's how kindness survives. One person helps another, who helps another, who helps another. An unbroken chain stretching forward into a future none of us will see, but all of us help create. I stood in that library, looking at the brass key fragment on the mantel, and smiled. Worth isn't granted. It's proved. And I'd spend the rest of my life helping others prove theirs. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that second chances matter, and that worth comes from within, I'd be grateful if you'd share it. Leave a comment about a time someone believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. And remember, you're worth more than anyone ever made you feel.